Now let's implement these HTTP routers and HTTP service which we created, the reactive ones, so that we can start consuming it in the app for login, sign up, or even for refresh token. So for that, let's first create the first router, or maybe the first service, which is I'm just gonna call it as chatroom service because it's going to be reused for each and every router that we are creating. So I'm gonna call it chatroom service class. Chatroom service is going to implement the reactive HTTP service which we created right now. So implement, it has actually we don't need this for this specific case because it's going to be reactive. So however we are going to implement is this anyway we are going to implement right now because we have included it in the um, has no initializers. Okay, this should be public. Let's see. And we also need init we have not done any this function will not be needed, but if you are interested in doing the non-Rx way, then you can maybe use this. So that's the reason I'm just including it. So this session manager is going to be instantiated. Let's do that. Self dot session is equal to session of alamofire dot. Let's keep the default one. So that is going to property, mark it as public. It's required to be public, but I don't really need it to be public, but then we don't have an option. I'm just going to implement all these request convertible URL request. So this is going to be our function. So this is my chatroom service. Now I'm going to include the other one, which is the router. I'm gonna call it account HTTP router because it's going to be very specific for all the login scenarios or create account scenarios and all that. So I'm just gonna call it HTTP account HTTP router. It's going to be a protocol. Let's keep alamofire, which is very much required, and it's going to be an enum. Sorry, not protocol. And I'm gonna call it the same thing, account HTTP router, and it's going to implement the reactive HTTP router which we had. Maybe we will do that in the extension of account HTTP router, reactive HTTP router. So this will need it to implement some things. So let's keep it public because we need to expose it outside. And cases that I'm looking at are login and sign up. Just going to keep those functions right now, cases right now, and also implement router. Okay, everything is public right now because we had kept it as private, so it's now public. Extensions functions are made public, and some of the things which we need to implement here are these ones. We need to set the path, method, and the headers. Rest of the things are internal mostly, but we might just have to capture some of the things where we create the body part and all, so that needs to be included. So first thing is the base URL. So base URL, so I'm going to do, it's going to be the same for all of these cases. So I'm just going to keep it as one, which is HTTP. It's going to be localhost 8080, and that's going to be my API. So I already have tested this in Postman. So this is my API HTTP login, and the path is going to be this one right now. If it is login, and something like creation is going to be where is it? Okay, I just have sign up. So sign up is going to be the creation part, API sign up. So API, this is my base URL. Now the path is going to be specific to each cases. So my cases are right now login, and in the case, second case is sign up dot sign up. Return, first is login, that's the URL, the path URI, and sign up. I think I've given it as sign up. Let's once check sign up. Yeah, so this is what the path is, sign up. So combined with base URL, you combine the path, it gives you the whole URI to access that specific resource. And let's also do the HTTP method types. Right now I only have the post one, so I'm just going to directly return post. So that's my HTTP method. And the headers, I think I just need to right now have I'm again going to keep it as header is as key value, so I'm just going to keep it as key for the content type is what I mainly need, but because Node.js server specifically requires this to be passed, otherwise it's not going to respond back with an response. So I'm just keeping it as content type is going to be application JSON is what my header is. Now I'm also going to define the body part. Body, we already have it in base, we are just returning nil there, I guess. The body part public is added. So wherever it was missing, because I made everything public, everything is made as public here. So URL request is there, and request, these things we have already have an implementation here. But for the body, mostly if you are not sending any body, you'll keep it nil. But in our case, we need the body to be sent, so we are keeping the body within the account HTTP router itself, the body part, and we are going to create it for the switch cases itself. First is a login case, and second is the sign up case. So for the body creation, we have to right now, actually I'm gonna keep it as nil right now, because let's just get rid of all the errors, because we need to send something as a body. So what is that we sent as body? Let's see, I'll show you what the request is, the body side. This is what I'm gonna send to the server: username, email, and password. And once I, let's say, do a sign up, my server is going to respond back. Let's say if my ID is wish@mail.com with password wish1234, maybe just keep it simple, our username being iWish, server request is going to be this subject, and response is going to be this one, where it sends back a message: user created successfully, and username is iWish, same thing I'm just sending back. And it's also giving me an access token and a refresh token along with the expires, like when is this access token going to expire. Once expired, what is that you need to do? You'll send mostly the same access token maybe, or the refresh token to the server, compare it with whatever is saved against your user ID's access token, and then it's always hashed. So you do a compare and see whether both are same. If it is the same, then you send back a new access token using this refresh token. That's how it's going to work. So this is going to be the request and response. So if you see the request, it's going to be most of the it's going to be something called as a user, where you have the username, email, password, and then a token data. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this content to create a JSON codable type. So I'm just going to show you that right now. So I'm just going to grab this one. There's no option to clear the existing. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the same thing which I have generated using this. So this is my it's a quicktype.io is where I have generated it. So it has the message, what is the message that I receive as a response when I create, and then there are the user objects which is created, which contains username, email, password is one field which is not coming back as response. So whatever we will do is we will capture this codable type from here, modify it according to our requirement, because some of the things might be nil type, so we also need to handle it, otherwise it's going to crash when we send a request or something. So I'm going to directly use this as is for this tutorial. This is my request and response type going to be. So I'm gonna come back to my section where I have the models. I'm gonna create something called as a new file. Should be within models, and I'm going to call it as auth response, because auth response is more or less the same for, let's say, a login or a sign up. Both of them are going to give you back the same kind of response. So I'm just going to keep it as one response type, auth response. Create that. I'm just going to keep there because the auth response is created using the quick type thing, so they want us to keep their own structure. So I'm just keeping that here. It's already giving me errors. Does not conform to decodable, codable, user. Do we already have? Okay, we already have a user which we use for sending that email and username. So I'm going to get rid of this one because we are going to use. Okay, maybe I'm just going to grab this user which is here, created here, and keep it there. That's my user. And one thing that we will have to do here is to modify some of the things which are required and then some of the things which are nullable types. So I'm gonna make password as one more parameter here, email, and whatever is mandatory or whatever is not a nil type is only email. So I'm just going to grab that one, keep that as separate, and the rest of the things I'm going to make it as a nullable type. String token data is also something which is only going to come back as a response, but whatever is going to go as a request will anyway have email as one parameter. Password is going to be another for login. Username we are only going to use when we are going to let's say sign up. So email username is something that we are going to use when you sign up. Email password is when you are going to do a login. So email is common for both, and it's also coming back along with the response. If you see, response is also having the email. So this is something which is always going to be there. So I'm just keeping it as non-nil type. Also, one thing we need to do everywhere is to make everything public because it's a framework. So we will have to keep that public for access. So public, even this one is public. Token data, it's already giving error because it's not a public type. We will also have to do that. So token data is public, and we know that some of the things in token data is going to be, I guess everything is going to be there, so I don't need to do any changes here, but I need to make these things public. And rest, this is something we already have. I think this new JSON decoder, let me just see. Okay, I don't have it. I'm just going to keep this. Oh, maybe I can just keep it here itself because it's only going to be used maybe I can grab it and keep it within utility as a JSON helper utility. It's called JSON schema support .swift. I'm just going to create that within utility, new file. JSON schema support. And I'm just going to grab the whole thing and keep it there so that it's reusable for, let's say, any scenario we might encounter. So that's done. Schema is moved there. So it's going to ask me, so I can just say import that one, utility. It should be available now, or maybe I need to make it public even there because it's within a framework. Public, two places. So I'm just still getting more errors. Clean and rebuild. Let's see. So we have model utility auth response utility could not be built. Utility is giving me some errors. Let's fix that first. Utility is fine. So we have some places more we need to include utility where it was used. It's fixed here. Now I don't think these functions are needed which came generated. I don't need those. I'm gonna create my own functions. And username, it's still that same error. Chat rooms, I think very much pretty much that's what that thing is resolved right now. Let's just build our service part and see. It should compile fine first thing. Service is compiling fine, so we are not consumed it. So okay, let's go to the service and fix rest of the things. So we need a body to be passed on login. So for that we need to have an init for login. So let's do that. Go to the models, user. I don't have an init here. I'm going to create one more init which will be used for login, where I'm just going to pass email and password. So self.email email, self.password password. Still should compile fine. That's it. And now something for sign up, which is going to be email, username, and I think what else is needed? Username, email are the only two things which we will use for sign up. Yeah, so let's do that. Email, username. Is there something else? I feel like something is there. Okay, we also need the password to be stored. Password, self.password equal to password. So three things. Let's go back to our service now because we have the init available. So what is the body that we need to pass here? So body is something which should be accepted through this login and sign up. So we are going to pass two parameters here. Again, it's going to be user itself, import model, so that it's accessible models. So user, again, even for sign up, user. So two parameters passed. Now it's going to give me those two parameters through this, where I can just use it. Let user, even here, let user object. So this is carrying the information which needs to be encode, and then we can send it. So we already have the utility functions. You just need to, it's requiring this to be converted to JSON data. So I can just say JSON data because this is some function utility I included right now. So new JSON encoder, it came along with whatever we generated here. They gave all the functions which are needed to actually do stuff like if you have an object, a user object, let's say if you want to convert it into a JSON string, they have a function for that. If you want to convert it into a JSON data, they have a function for that. It's coming loaded with lots of functions already, so I'm just reusing their code. So that's what I'm even using here. This JSON data function I'm just calling here user.json data, which converts my codable user object into JSON data. So now all I need to do is to call this try because it has a throw. So it's going to be thrown somewhere else if it throws an error when we are doing this. Similarly for this one, the same thing, user all that I need to do is to create the JSON data. It's not the same object. It might be using different inits, because in logins case you are only going to send the email and the password, but in sign up case it's going to be three of them, like email, username and the password. But the response from the server is going to be similar, because I don't want the user to first sign up, then go to the login and again login. Two steps is not needed, at least in my case. So whatever I'm doing is, as soon as he signs up, the whole of the record which is needed, let's say the refresh token, access token, all that information comes back along with the sign up information. So we're just verifying the user right away, and then I'm sending. If you need to, let's say, do a verification based on email or something, then you might have to prolong that steps, like you just need to sign him up, use him to verify using that email or something, and then let him log in. That's up to you to how you want to implement it. But in this case, it's going to be a simple login. Like as soon as you sign up, you logged into the app. That's how I'm going to do it. So I'm just sending these user information. Now at one point it's going to ask me to create this user object. That's where that's going to happen. For that, let's start creating the service layer for this. So right now it was the HTTP service. So I'm gonna, which is using Alamo Fire, but I don't want to restrict my service layer to just use Alamo Fire. Instead, I can create another layer which is going to consume any kind of service, which can be Alamo Fire based or even NSURL session based or something. So for that, I'm going to create the regular service. I'm going to call it account service. I think that's what I call. Yes, account service. I'm going to call it as account service. This is going to consume my HTTP service. Account service should be within let's connect service. So class account service, and this is going to implement a protocol called account API. And extension, let's create an extension to this. Let this be a public protocol because it's going to be exposed outside. Public final function extension account API is going to be implemented so that whatever function that we are going to define is going to be available. So what are the functions that I defined? Account service. I have sign up and login, two functions right now. I'm going to use the sign up. Maybe I'll start with the login, just the login, because we just have the login function right now, and I already have registered this user. So we can just test it using this wish@mail.com and this password and see whether it works. After that, we'll do the sign up from the app itself. So go back, login function, accepting email and password, and it's going to return a single user object which we created right now. So we need to import RxSwift. User is through models, so I need to import models as well. That's included. Now account, oh, what did I expose? Extension should implement this account API. Now it's asking me to implement that. So the function implementation, it needs to now return a response type of single. For before doing that, I need to consume the HTTP service here. So let's create that. I'm just gonna directly create those instances here. Public. Maybe I'll keep this private. Shared instance is what I'm gonna expose. Okay, maybe because I already have a service use case factory, I can directly create an instance there. Public init, and then I'm gonna have a private instance of HTTP service which we created, which is the chatroom. Did I call it chatroom service? Maybe I can rename it to chatroom HTTP service because it's an HTTP service. This is going to maybe then trigger some error chatroom service. Instead it should be chatroom HTTP service. And I can create an instance chatroom HTTP service. Did I make it? I think I made it. It's a public init. Maybe I can make it a private init and expose it through a singleton. Chatroom service public static. So now I can just call that chatroom service HTTP service.shared. It's actually not exposed outside this framework, so I don't need to make it public. So I have this chatroom service HTTP service available. Now all that I need to do is for login's case, it's only one error right now, missing return. So implementation starts right now, where we are going to call the HTTP router we defined. It's which was the account HTTP router has the login function right now. This is nothing but our enum which we created as a login case. That's what we are accessing here. Login dot, it's accepting a user object. So we can create a user here. Let user equal to, or maybe you don't even need to create another function, you can just pass it here. User, we need the email and the password one. So email, password. So that's my login. All that I need to do is to make a rx dot request with the service. So we already know what service we need to. We are instantiate the HTTP service here. I just pass that and it's going to throw. So I need to handle that. Cannot convert. Call to throw, sign up, login. I think login function is not a throwable type. Let's do it. Okay, rx dot request. So we have created the rx dot request side. Now it will be it will give a response. I can just call a response, and this is going to be of type. If you see, I have made a request and its response is of type and observable type. Data response it gives back. So that's my response. It has now become a reactive version. And all that I can do now is to map that response. I can just do a map and get that data response. I can just call it as response. I can do anything I want with it right now. So let me handle that response. So finally it is asking me to convert this into a single. That's the ultimate aim here. So I'm gonna do that. So I have this response. I can check what the response.data is. If there is any data, I can do a guardlet data equal to, if there is any data, else I'm just sending it as an error. And if this response dot status response dot response, okay, maybe you should call it result so that we don't confuse. Result dot data and result dot response dot status code. If it is 200 login case, it's going to be 200. If that's where I handle the response. If it is 200, I'm going to consume this data for the positive case, where I know that it's going to be the result which I have received. And I'm gonna do something with that response. If it is an error, I'm gonna throw an error. For that, let me define the error side. I don't have anything for errors right now. Let me create a model for that. Errors, and it's going to be, I'm going to call it as chatroom error. New function, new file, chatroom error within models enum chatroom error public. So there are so many kinds of errors that I'm interested in capturing. It should come in, it should implement error type. So one of the things is not found error, which is like 404. Then next thing is mandatory missing. So in this case, it's going to give an error when some mandatory parameter is missing. Case, then it can also be an internal error, which is like 500. If you get a response callback from the server saying 500, then you actually handle internal error. Then forbidden, which is like 401, forbidden, unauthorized. You can even call it unauthorized. Unauthorized. And then parsing failure, parsing failed error. Finally, we can have a custom error where you can just say send some error string back. Custom error string. So these are my error types. So I'm going to use these. Chatroom, whenever you encounter, let's say, an error here, I'm just going to throw an error. Throw. Maybe here I can use a chatroom error dot custom chatroom error dot, what is this going to be? The parsing is failing here, so maybe I can just say parsing failed. Throw that parsing failed error here, and if it is successful, I'm gonna parse this data. So I received a response.data. All that I need to do is, I know that the response is going to be of this specific type, so I can just say, I'm gonna parse it. I'm gonna say auth response what is the auth response? It is still not public, that's why it's not exposed. So we need to make things public. Public message and user is always going to come back with these things. So now it should be available. Auth response. Maybe I also will need auth response dot init from what is that I have done? Auth response dot init from data, init using data. I don't see that, but that's not exposed, I think. Auth response, let me see, from decoder. So some of the things are not still public, so we need public. So now it should expose whatever we need. We need to also move this token data outside. I think that is also not public yet. Where is token data? Okay, let's handle this auth response first. From data, so now we have the data access, so we can just say data. So it is handling. Now it now creates the object called auth response. I can just return that now. Return auth response. So this is expecting the return type is going to be auth response. So two cases handle. What if it is something other than 200? Maybe then at that point we can just throw maybe if it is, maybe you can handle multiple cases here, but then I'm going to keep it within an else and say throw chatroom error dot something went wrong, internal error maybe. So that's handle. So this map cannot convert from observable. Still it is giving me an error. So all that I need to do is it's transforming. I need to transform this response. Right now I have this response. This is mapping back to an auth response type. Still that is not what my final response should be. I need to actually handle the auth response user element. So I can map it and transform that into a user. Just capture that user. Still it's mapped now. It is an observable type of user. That's what this map does. This auth response observable is mapped to a user observable. That's not final. I need a single. So all I can say now is I'm just make it as single. So it's stopped giving me any kind of errors, at least here. And it say can throw, so I can just say try here as well. So that's also handled. Now what all things? Error thrown is not handled, so it's expecting to handle an error here. But what is that error? Let me just find out. Login. Maybe I can just okay, we will handle that in a bit. Let me error handling anyway is coming up after we're done with the initial flow. So I'm just keeping this. We need to revisit this, saying to do error handling for login failure cases. We are not done that yet, so it has to happen somewhere. We'll do that as soon as we finish this. So this is my flow for login. Right now it is available through a service, and we have an accounts API which has the basic structure of what the function should look like. So this is what we are going to now pass to the interactor, because this whole flow is going to take care of login feature. Like I make a login request using an email and a password. It translates it into a user object. I send it send a request where it gets converted to a codable type, then the data type for the Elmo file. Once that request is on, it gives me a response JSON. I'm mapping that response JSON and capturing that result. Using that result, I'm seeing whether data is existing or not. If data is not existing, I'm saying passing has failed, or maybe this is where the passing is actually failing. So I can just say okay, that's fine. Maybe this is more like data is not there, then not found is something I can just say, because it can be like there was nothing, data was nothing, so nothing was found. And here it is not. If it is 200, I'm just handling it, but there can be cases where it can be 404. I have not handled that here, but we can handle it later. So I'm just keeping this to a limited level right now. So this whole thing maps and maps and maps, finally sends out a single element which is sent across as a response. So this is what we are going to consume right now in the interactor. Let's go to the interactor, account interactor. What was it called? What is the interactor we created? It is use case account interactor, and this is where we are going to pass. Maybe we can get rid of this API WebSocket because we are not going to use it here, and I'm going to call it account service. This WebSocket API goes off. Account service is what we want to log in, and we will set up the, as soon as the login completes, we will set up the WebSocket at that point, but not here which used to happen earlier. Private let self dot account service to account service. It's going to give me error. This WebSocket service is not available right now. We are not there yet, so we need to go to the use cases side, compile, and it's giving me error saying this is not there. So first thing first, we just comment out this part, because this is more like we can even get rid of this we can implement later, because login flow is totally different right now. So one other thing, okay, let's implement. So we have the self dot service account service dot, you can just say login, pass the email and the password. So this is a reactive response right now, so we can just say this is, we can map it back. So this response comes back through the map, login request is gone, response comes back through this map response, which is actually a user object. The user is what you get back as a response. So user is actually having both the user information as well as the access token information, which we are going to save locally right now. We are not persisting it in this episode, but we'll keep it something like this, where we will create a user relay. We already have the user relay, we just save that within user relay, and the token anyway is available within that user relay itself. So we can just use that user relay. I'm gonna use that. So I'm gonna just call, I can just, because this is sending a response like this, instead of map I can just say flat map and get rid of these things and just say save user, because save user is accepting a user, which in turn returns a single. So I guess this should not give me an error. It's giving somewhere else. Where is that argument? Okay, it's giving an error somewhere else. So this is what how it is going to happen right now. We send a request through the API, the account API, to login, and the login responds back with the user information. We flat map because we want to translate the observable user which we received to something like a single empty observable. So we are using the user observable to create an empty observable, where within the save user function we are actually saving, not even saving, it's just that we are passing it to the user relay so that it accepts. Once you kill the app, it's gone, it will not be retained. So that retention we can do once, maybe using a database like Realm or Core Data or something, or even user defaults. You can do that. If it is sensitive information, maybe somewhere else as well, encrypted. So right now for this episode, I'm just going to keep it within the user relay. I'm just going to show how it's going to be accessed somewhere else, and then user information can be accessed somewhere. So because we have this user relay, and we are exposing this user relay through an observable called user, which is nothing but observable created out of this user relay. The behavior relay as observable gives you an observable of user which can be consumed somewhere else. That somewhere else I'll show you. So first thing, let's get rid of this WebSocket which was created. We will create it later once we are completed with the login flow. And I'm gonna pass WebSocket service creation. I'm gonna comment out because it's not going to be used right now. And I'm gonna create private static let account service equal to account service. This is what we are going to pass here. It's asking for account service. We'll pass it. That's fine. So it's accepting that account service which we created. So we are very close to moving that implementation. So one of the biggest advantages that we know changes are local, and whatever changes happens can be easily captured like this. So it's email and password are the two parameters right now. We need to modify the parameter names wherever we are passing right now. It's compiling fine. Let's go verify it once wherever it is consumed. So let's go to the presenter for the use cases where you are passing username and email. Let's modify it. It should be email and password as the two parameters. It's not going to give you any kind of error because these are just placeholder labels. Just that whatever you are passing should be, you're already passing it correctly. You are all login, earlier flow used to be email and username. Instead, it's now email and password, and the validation is proper. And as soon as the validation is fine, even here we can rename it to email and password so that you don't mess it up. So username and password, and these there is no change which happened on the presenter much, because we just modified the login parameters. That's it. It did not give much of a compilation error, because only change happened was on the use case side. So that's the biggest advantage of using VIPER, where if you are decoupling something or modifying something, let's say in a use case side or a server side, it does not impact much on the app side, or at least on the view or the presenter side. Now we need to modify some of the things, like on login it should route to the window. That should happen right now, I guess, because login successful, it comes here, and route to window. Route to window is what in the login chatroom presenter. Let's go to the window where it, I think, takes you to the route to window. This is my login view. Route to window takes you to the tab bar, so that's where it takes you. Let's do that. So let's check. Let's keep a breakpoint where we receive the response from the server, which should be within account service. I'm just going to keep a response. Oh, we don't have any logs here, so I can just say status code. It changes. Maybe I can just keep a variable here, let auth response equals this, and just maybe return that, return auth response, so that I can see the response. So let's run it. Start. Let's see what all are the wish@mail.com and wish1234 should let us log in, and it should send me the access token and everything. Let's see that. Username, it's still username. Let's modify it. It should be email. Login. Email. This is an email field. Email address. Okay, let's run it. Start. Email, so wish@mail.com. Password is wish1234. Login. Nothing went through. Let's see. It needs secure connection, so we need to maybe make it in the info we need to modify so that HTTP is also accepted. Let's go. What is that I need to do? Let me check. App security, app transport security settings. I don't have anything for that. Let me add it. App application app transport security settings. Add it, and I also need to add allow arbitrary to true. Yes, I guess this should work. Let's run it. But you should remove it when in production. Wish1234. Login. API login, localhost 8080. Is it 8080? API login. It's working. What is wrong? let's grab this so that I don't make much mistake. Localhost, I think whatever I provided is wrong. HTTP router, chatroom HTTP router. Okay, big mistake. API. wishmail.com wish234. What happened? Let me check my service. It crashed. Cannot set headers after they are sent to the client. So I think login, sign up, content type, headers, what was received. Okay, this looks like an older one. Let's clear. Nothing is going through. Let's see where we are wrong. Account interactor, login. Comes to login, account service, comes to account service, login request is fired with service, response is coming back, it throws an exception, that's the reason. So I guess something is wrong. (401) unauthorized, that means password is wrong. What is the password using which I registered? It needs to be seen. Let's check something. Okay, wish1234 wish@mail.com is fine. So I'm not sure what's wrong here. What's the email? Data is there. It does not give a second request. That's something I need to see why, because it's ending there itself. We'll check that, but let's see what's wrong here. Mail.com, wish@mail.com, wish1234. Let's see what's coming here. Email, wish@mail.com. Password is okay. It's wrong. Go back. Chatroom login. Controller. Password is here. Whatever is accepted is wrong, so it is in the presenter where it is going wrong. Input is email, input is password. Okay, here. Now it should work. Silly mistakes. Wish. It's better that you have a logger implemented so that it's easier to track things. You can do that later end of it. Account service triggers, I think now it should be fine. Yeah, password is fine, username is fine. Service creates a request, response comes back, it's perfectly fine. It gives me an auth response. What is the auth response? Use of unresolved identifier. It's going in, so actually we have that response. It did authorize. I was not able to see it. Maybe we can just print it and see once, because otherwise auth response, if you want to actually see what's coming back, let's once finally run it once and see. wish@mail.com, wish1234, logged in, and you have the whole user successfully logged in. Username I wish, password anyway not needed. Tokens are coming back, access token, refresh token, and expires in 3600. So that's what it is. Now the next step, I'll show you how to bind these values. Plus we'll also create that sign up feature along with this one. So I'll see you in the next episode. So until the next episode, it's bye from me.